Today, we'll hit the keys to victory, talk about the top Mountaineers to pay attention to, and with so many coaches now sliding into obscurity, makes me wonder, is Mike Gundy a genius, an evil genius, or just kind of evil?
You are Locked On Oklahoma State, your daily podcast on the Oklahoma State Cowboys, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Howdy, y'all, and hello, all. Welcome back to Locked On Oklahoma State, your daily stop for all things Cowboy and Cowgirl related. My name is Cody Stovall. I want to thank you kindly for stopping by to make this your first listen. We're available on all of your podcasting platforms, visually as well on YouTube. Find me personally on the X at Aldeo State. Today, we're partially brought to you by FanDuel. Make every moment matter more with FanDuel, because right now, new customers can place a $5 bet and get started with $200 back in bonus bets, guaranteed. Make sure that you visit FanDuel.com to get started today. Meanwhile, we shift into the conversation of what I thought at one point in time was one of the biggest strengths to this Cowboy team. Was not necessarily the fact that we had all of the returning starters and the roster, but it was more of the fact that we have a retention of staff that is almost unprecedented. The only place in the country who has more coaches that have been on staff for a longer duration is Utah, and it's literally by just a few months. Oklahoma State has a lot of coaches that have been here 9 years, 12 years, 14 years, 17 years, much like Utah. Outside of Oklahoma State and Utah, there's a pretty big gap between us and everybody else when it comes to retention of staff. Both Utah and Oklahoma State have been very consistent winners, so it does make a lot of sense. And in the recruiting landscape, you want to have that familiarity from a parent's perspective, a developmental perspective. You want to have faith that your kid's going to get developed and there's not going to be a lot of craziness going on around them. Part of that craziness is not having to deal with a bunch of new coaches, a bunch of new schemes and systems all the time. Those things have to be taken into consideration, and if you're going to take them into consideration, coming to Oklahoma State makes a whole lot of sense. But then you have to look at this season and wonder if maybe there's a little bit of complacency in there. Like maybe Mike Gundy is so good at retention, but partially because we're put in a position like right now where not very many people are going to want our dudes. I'm not saying it's strategic or on purpose, right? So it's kind of tongue-in-cheek. But a lot of these coaches, if you're not coaching to get yourself out of this season or get yourself into the CFP, into the Big 12 title game, wherever it may be, at least put yourself in a position to be successful at your next job. Because as it sits right now, I don't know a whole heck of a lot of coaches in that locker room for Oklahoma State that are going to get promotions, a.k.a. bigger jobs, bigger responsibilities, and more money after Oklahoma State. Like you all know, I'm a huge Bryan Nardo guy. I think that his ascension, although quick, is something that's going to prove its worth, not only in the recruiting trail, which we've seen, but I think eventually he'll kind of get the hang of everything. Part of it is the defensive line. His defense is predicated upon the defensive line getting up and doing stuff. Well, that's not happening. And we're also last in the Big 12 in rush defense. That cannot happen. We're worst in the Big 12 and one of the worst in the country in giving up big plays. And we're very, very bottom of the Big 12 in passing plays as well. So there's a lot of metrics that Bryan Nardo is not helping himself, not only with the Cowboy ball club that we currently have, but if he has aspirations to take over at some point in time here or take this job to a higher level, this is not going to get it done. Timurte, I know the dudes love you in the locker room. They love you on the recruiting trail, but the development, unfortunately, has not been there. I mean, if you go back just to look at last week, was Alan Bowman better against Kansas State than he was against Utah? Yes, he was. But he was still 2 for 15 when getting pressured. 64% of his passes come out of his hand in less than 2.5 seconds, which is good. You want that 2011 style offense, but the route trees are a little bit different, and he misses by way too much. It's okay to miss by a couple feet here and there, but to be missing wide open out routes that, I don't know, are that bad, it's got to be addressed. It's got to be fixed. Garrett Rangel, when he has come in, seemingly doesn't seem like he's ready. That's got to be partially on Timurte. Charlie Dickey, what happened, dude? You were a legend at Kansas State. The offensive lines at Kansas State were one of the most legendary of all time. But we've scored below a 53 in the PFF run grading department more than any other team in the country this season. And we were at the very bottom last year as well. I didn't realize that we were at the very bottom last year for that amount of time as well, but it is what it is. And thanks to some gentlemen from a West Virginia show, 3 guys before the game, they're the ones that found the 53 most difficulty in the run department, not only this year, but last year as well. Scoring under a 53 is unprecedented. And we did it last year for the bulk of the season and this season. So we got all 5 guys back, which means we all thought that they would get better. But unfortunately, they're producing the same numbers as they did last season. The best numerical guy that we have is Jason Casel-Brooks, who obviously just entered the transfer portal. So Pass Pro does look good on paper statistically, but we're one of the only teams in the country that gets the ball out in under 2.5 seconds. So when you're getting the ball out that fast, the sack numbers or the pressure numbers are going to be slightly misleading. That means Charlie Dickey is failing, and I don't understand how somebody at this point in time in his career can look at this and be like, wow, well, yeah, I'm going to be able to transition this into a better job. Kasey Dunn, I mean, I don't have to go on and on here. You are terrible. Please take your Fiesta Bowl ball and go home. John Wozniak, nah, you're good. I mean, Ollie Gordon has been a little bit more hesitant this year. Maybe he's not hitting the hole as hard or being as aggressive or as patient, but John Wozniak gets a pass because anytime your running back's getting hit behind the line of scrimmage, 52% of the time he gets the football. I mean, that literally is playing against the stacked deck. And unfortunately, Ollie did the same thing last season. Again, the offensive line statistics last season in pass run blocking were equally as bad as this year, if not worse. So last year was all a Herculean effort on Ollie Gordon. People have made adjustments this year. People are basically spying Ollie instead of our quarterback because he's the difference maker. And we haven't found a way to adjust it. Paul Randolph, we fire the alumni legend, Greg Richmond. I know that there was some issues with the 3-3-5 and his philosophies. I get all that fun stuff. Paul Randolph, 25 years of coaching experience, a legend in the game, 22 years on the defensive line. He's been SEC Recruiter of the Year. He's been a Coach of the Year at multiple levels. He's been a head coach before, but it's not translating on the field. This has been a legendarily big failure thus far from our defensive line. So the Paul Randolph show, it's not been good super early on. Tim Duffy, I mean, you've done pretty good. And you've done pretty good your entire career, so you're good to go. But we do have to have a little bit more out of this group, especially in the recruiting department, so we make sure we're continuing to build the depth. Dan Hammerschmidt, no, you're good. Safeties are in a good spot. Joe Bob Clements, no, you're good. You know, he was the defensive line coach before the linebackers coach. He did great there. He's doing great here. Jason McEndoo, let's just call a spade, right? I think Josiah Johnson covered some things up for us last year, but he might just kind of be doo-doo, and we might just have to accept that. It's an unfortunate reality that you do have coaches that are put themselves in a position now where it's highly unlikely that they're going to get opportunities to advance their career. To extend their career, different story. Advancement is a different scenario. The last major advancement we would have been Jim Knowles. Before that, Mike Yurcich. And now Mike Yurcich obviously got fired from Penn State, but still, he made that advancement. And then we have gone since then with the homie hookup system of Kasey Dunn. I'm sure Mike Gundy has a lot of comfort there. I'm sure he has a lot of familiarity there. We know he doesn't like to upset the apple cart and, teach new systems year after year or every few years even. But it's starting to become potentially a little bit of a limitation. Maybe not even a little bit of a limitation. Maybe getting some new shoes on a car every now and again is good for the rig. Maybe we need to fancy some things up. We've proven we can raise NIL money. Put that same onus on the fan base, the QR code type of thing, for that kind of money when it comes to going after coordinators. The only downside to that is I don't think very many people would be super happy about going and getting the Sean Gleasons and the Mike Yurciches and the Bryan Nardos of the world simply because of the negative connotation that comes with it. Those guys, no matter how good they are, they're going to take time to adjust to this level of college football, the speed, the intensity, the injuries. So while they're trying to figure it out, you usually have to have something on the other side of the ball that can help spell some of the disasters. This year, we don't have that. So the deficiencies we have are glaring on both sides of the ball. And if you take some of the good statistics, like Alan Bowman, number 3 in the conference in passing yards, it's also narrowed down by the fact that he has 6 interceptions already. And Pro Football Focus designated that he really should have like 8 or 9. And that's accurate. I mean, you can see the almost kind of turnovers as well. So the development of Oklahoma State coaching staff has either become complacent or maybe he was just, hyped up a little bit too much to begin with. And I left out Rob Glass, but the D-line getting pushed around, knowing what guys like Justin Kirkland can lift and squat and bench. How can they put up those NFL first-round level numbers in the weight room and it not translate onto the football field? I don't know where the disconnect there is, but Rob Glass is the best in the game, except for this year, we haven't looked like it. We're not physically imposing ourselves upon anybody. There's literally not a team we've played thus far, including South Dakota State, that we were more physical than up front. It's great that the linebackers and the DBs and the quarterbacks are all kind of progressing and they're gaining 17 pounds and shaving a couple tenths off their 40. That's fantastic. But the meat and taters department down low, they seem to be having the same level of weight gain and speed gain and all of that, but it's not translating. Rob Glass isn't going anywhere. Mike Gundy isn't going anywhere. We understand that. They're a package deal. We're okay with that. But I don't know how any of these coaches can be okay with the product they're putting on the field and also understanding that I'm tanking my opportunities. Because instead of Kasey Dunn being an offensive coordinator at another Power 4 school, likely now he goes back to a wide receiver coach. Now, he might go to a wide receiver coach at like Georgia. That's a possibility, I guess. But his opportunities of getting another OC job at this level are like next to zero. Tim Rattay, the development at quarterback for Oklahoma State has been zero. I don't see anybody going to be beating down his door. Same with Jason McEndoo. Same with Charlie Dickey. I would imagine the conversation is, oh, yeah, he lost the luster that he used to have. Maybe it appears as though that's the case. Bryan Nardo, thankfully, still young, and he is still developing, and he is able to put forth some things on film that have won us several ball games to at least give us that sliver of hope that Bryan Nardo can figure it out. He can make the adjustments. He can get it done. But most of these other coaches have been here 4 years, 9 years, 17 years, 19 years. And although that continuity continues to be something that can be utilized very well in recruiting, it can also turn around and bite you. Because as a parent, right, that's the difference between getting a low 3-star and maybe a high 4-star, low 5-star. If you're getting a 3-star who only other offers are like Troy and Missouri State and places like that, then yeah, the Oklahoma State coaches look amazing to your parents, your coaches, your trainers, everybody. But if you're like a 4-star, 5-star type of dude, and you can go get the top coaches in the country that have a long history of sending dudes to the NFL or getting X, Y, and Z out of them, if they're at Bama or Georgia or Oregon, right? You have to pay attention to that stuff. And we're not doing a whole lot to advance our careers, not even in Stillwater or beyond. So at some point in time, it does make you wonder, did everybody just get a little bit too comfy in Stillwater? Did everybody just get, again, a little too complacent and thought that it was all going to resolve itself, or it was all going to work itself out, or it was all going to be this magical run that we all thought it was just because we had so many guys returning and we had so many numerical advantages when it comes to number of games played and starts and all that? Because it looks like we've dropped the ball. No, it doesn't look like. We have dropped the ball somewhere along the way, whether it's development, whether it's getting them ready, whether it's game planning, whether it's play calling, something. Something is failing pretty miserably right now, as is my hammer in the over department, but it's okay. We have time in the season for you to capitalize on your monetary gains. FanDuel is the bee's knees for everybody out there who's trying to get in on the action and capitalize on your monetary value. I know the Cowboys haven't really given us a lot of opportunities to hammer the over and make some of the money this year. But Cowboys that we have in the NFL, and if you're looking at Emmanuel Ogbah getting an interception, you're looking at Malcolm Rodriguez getting another sack, or if you're just looking at Jalen Warren having a big day, Justice Hill, Chuba Hubbard, whatever it may be, the NFL season allows you to get your next big return on FanDuel, America's #1 sports book. When you get that tingling sensation in the middle of the game that you know something crazy is about to happen, you can just feel it in your loins, and you want to bet the coin on it, you can now check out the latest stats, view the live play-by-play, and so much more on the same page where you're placing all your bets from. Right now, you'll get started with $200 back in bonus bets guaranteed when you place your first $5 bet. Again, that is $200 back in bonus bets when you place your first $5 bet. Get in on the action today with the best in the country and the land with FanDuel.com. Again, go get that $200 back in bonus bets guaranteed with FanDuel.com. Get in on the action today. So if you haven't made a lot of Cowboy money, let's talk about some of the West Virginia Mountaineers that we ought to pay attention to, and maybe some of them will help us all capitalize as well. First and foremost, this is no surprise, Garrett Green. Not only is, he's a very mobile quarterback that has a lot of talent, that can extend plays, that has a pretty good arm, but his story, sticking with his team, knowing he wasn't going to be the guy to probably not going to be the guy, and then they recruited a very, very high 4-star, Nico Marchiol, who most in West Virginia country thought, okay, now he's going to be the guy. Oklahoma State fans are going through the same thing with Zane Flores, but Garrett Green stuck it out. Even though he had several opportunities to leave, the 5'11", 200-pound quarterback has now thrown for 3,308 yards at his time in West Virginia, 23 touchdowns and only 8 picks, with almost 1,000 rushing at 981 yards and 15 rushing TDs at 6.4 yards per carry last year and almost 5 yards a carry this year. But it's not just the rushing and the extending of the plays. He has proven to be capable in the passing game. Again, 3,308 yards. The 23 TDs and only 8 INTs is a big number that pops out to me. He's got to throw it to somebody. Might as well be number 84, Hudson Clement. The 6'1", 195-pound walk-on has turned into a potential NFL professional football prospect. Maybe not NFL, but he's going to have some opportunities. And we recall him kind of getting loose on us a couple years ago, and the announcers talking about the walk-on that had to play because of injuries and things of that nature. We watched that game. We were like, who is this kid? And look at him now. He's one of the top wide receivers in the league. Or if you're talking about top guys, you got to go to their backfield. Now, they've been carried by C.J. Donaldson, the 6'2", 240-pound beast. Has almost 300 yards rushing this season, 1,082 yards combined with last season, 14 TDs at 5.6 yards per clip at this very moment. He is a beast, and he rocks number 4. So we might get some number 4 and 4 crime, or maybe not. Depends on whether Nick Martin's going to play or not. So we need to look at this number 4 as somebody to be excited about or at least be scared of. Another number 4, Trey Lathan. This dude, 6'1", 230 pounds. He plays like he's 6'4", 250. The 52 tackles between last year and this year are slightly deceptive because he's currently tied for currently holds 4th place in the Big 12 in the tackles for loss department. Go back to the backfield. Number 22, Jaheim White. The 5'7", 195-pound dude has almost as many rushing yards as C.J. Donaldson, 1,036. At 7.7 yards per carry last year. He's over 5.2 yards per carry this year, and he hasn't busted out really once yet this year. So the Jaheim White show, kind of like the Ollie Gordon show, has also been put on the shelves, and everyone's just waiting on the day for it to break out. Hopefully it's not this game. We'll go back to the defensive side of the ball. Number 2, Aubrey Burks. 5'11", 210 pounds, 60 tackles, 2.5 tackles for loss. Gets in on the sack department, fumbles force department. The dude's all over the field. And one of the great things about West Virginia is they do a lot of gang tackle. Like they rally around each other. So maybe the individual solo tackle numbers aren't going to be crazy. But we seemingly just have everybody in the team buy enough time for Trey Rucker and Nick Martin to show up to get all of our tackles. They don't do all that. They spread it out quite a bit, but Aubrey Burks, he made a name for himself several times. He's done it against Oklahoma State, and he'll be somebody we have to pay attention to. Down low, we've talked about how abysmal the offensive line has been. Well, they're going to have their hands full with T.J. Jackson. The 6'1", 282-pound Troy transfer is number 2 in the Big 12 in sacks and number 1 in the Big 12 in tackles for loss. The dude already has 8.5 tackles for loss. So they may not get a bunch of sacks as a team, but his 8.5 tackles for loss and 3.5 sacks means this particular dude lives in the backfield. And then I think defensively, you got to worry about number 12, Georgia Southern transfer, Anthony Wilson, 5'9", 195-pound safety, is top 15 in the Big 12 in tackles. So is number 40, 6'2", 240-pound redshirt freshman linebacker Josiah Trotter. Both are in the top 15 in the Big 12 in tackles. So you definitely have to pay attention to those individuals because there's going to be no massive disillusionment here. Some of the things that West Virginia struggles at, we might be able to exploit on. They're not good in the back end. They're not going to get all over us from a wide receiver perspective like Utah and K-State did. They're going to play a lot more zone. They're going to give Bowman many windows to exploit, but they're also going to find, I think, unique ways to get pressure on him because the numbers on Alan Bowman when he gets pressure are absolutely horrendous. It's because his platform and everything gets kind of funky and he reverts back to some old school bad tendencies that he has. West Virginia is going to try to exploit that. Meanwhile, we are going to be able to hit some things deep, right? This isn't Kansas State and Utah's back end defense. So they've been susceptible. Now, Alan Bowman's numbers, I can't remember the exact stat, but he's like 5 of 32 or 5 of 34 this year on passes over 20 yards. We're going to have to do better than that. We're definitely going to have to do better than that. And, of course, we'd be remiss if we didn't mention Jaden Bray. He'll factor into the game, I'm sure. Hopefully not too much because he's one of the Cowboys that we all miss and wish that he didn't leave. But, ironically, as you're seeing, wide receiver hasn't necessarily been a deficiency for Oklahoma State. The deficiencies that Kasey Dunn does have as an OC, he's still able to convince some of the top wide receivers to come here and continue to be productive. All right, let's shift to the keys to victory. Yes, I know we've got matchups and top matchups and things to go over, but we're going to save that because we've got a special guest likely tomorrow. So we're going to save some of that for him. But keys to victory, of course, first and foremost, find a way to contain Garrett Green. We struggle mightily against rushing quarterbacks. Here's another one. Last time they were in Stillwater, we watched it kind of get wild, and we lost the game. If you find a way to contain Green, I think you have a decent opportunity. That's going to come down to the next big key to victory, the defensive line. Yeah, we could hoot and holler all day about the O-line. We could give all the metrics and stats that prove how bad the O-line is. That's fine. I think a lot of people are starting to understand that. But the defensive line has been the most underwhelming thing on the year. The defensive line has done absolutely nothing to get pressure. Now, I will say that teams do pick on Cody Waltershide quite a bit. Therefore, he gets double teamed. But that means we should have other people getting freed up. And if we're not going to have other people getting freed up, then what are we flipping doing? We talked about having some of the backups come in on the offensive line, quarterback, DB, safety, whatever. We need an injection of something. We need the biggest injection at the defensive line. They have to find a way to get in the backfield and make Garrett Green uncomfortable, or it's going to be a long day for us. Another big key to the victory for me is establish some kind of run game, right? It doesn't have to be a traditional A gap, B gap, 2-hole, 4-hole, 6-hole. It doesn't have to be that. I'm not saying we should go back to zone blocking scheme either, even though going off of the amount of RPOs we do, it is kind of odd that we don't have a zone blocking scheme, but that's okay. We know it doesn't work for Ollie. That's why we switched to what we have now, but it's not working. So even if we can't get Ollie up the middle, rocking and rolling, I know I hate it. I hate screen pass, tunnel screen, slip screen, all this other screen stuff, but you got to do something to extend West Virginia's defense side to side, because that's the only way I think we're going to be able to open up some of the middle to get the running game going. throwing it deep to open up the run game, it has not worked. We got to find a way to get them going sideline to sideline to maybe then open up some of that middle. We got to beat their DBs. We mentioned this is not Utah. It's not K-State. We can get over top of them, but it's got to be wide receivers bailing out Alan Bowman. If Alan Bowman throws great balls, that's awesome. But if he doesn't, our wide receivers are going to have to do more than just rely on Bowman's pass to hit him in the breadbasket. They have to win the 50-50 balls and beat the DBs. And lastly, maybe the most important, string together long drives. Of course, touchdowns are significantly better than field goals, right? Especially after you sustain a long drive. Last thing you want to do is end it on 3 points instead of 7. But we'll take the 3 if you at least give the D some time to make adjustments, some time to rest. And when we do get stops, even if it doesn't result in a touchdown, just get a few first downs. Just extend drives. If you can extend the drives and kind of, get the clock management a little bit better by extending them east to west to open up some of those holes down low, because as it sits right now, people are going to load the box, stop Ali. They know Alan Bowman's going to get the ball out of his hand in under 2.5 seconds. Therefore, they're just crowding receivers' first breaks. So maybe give us some double moves. Let's just not throw 9 balls, a go route, right? Basically straight up the field with a little bit of a bend. Let's give some sluggos. Let's give some double move stuff. Let's let Brendan Priestley have some fun with the option routes, and let's option himself all the way into the end zone. This is a winnable game for both teams because both teams struggle in a lot of the same categories. So it could be, I don't know, the best driver of the struggle bus wins this one, and that's okay. To get back on track, it doesn't have to be pretty. We just have to win because the Big 12 race is crazy. So we're still somewhat in the daggone thing. So those are the keys. Got a special guest for you for tomorrow. You're not going to want to miss it. Until then, I reckon that's all we're going to have for this one right here. As always, I love you. God bless. Go Pokes. Thank you for tuning in to make this your first listen here in Locked On Oklahoma State. You could be anywhere. So happy you choose to be here. Like it if you like the daggone thing. Dislike if you don't. That's okay too. More importantly, share, comment, and subscribe my podcast. And people out there, hear the bricks, the butter, the bread, the fondue. Hit the stars, leave a review. You know what to do. Oh, and for my regulators out there, before you skedaddle on off of here, for your next listen, go check out our buddy Spencer McLaughlin. All right. Go check out what Locked On College Football has to offer. He's going to talk about everything all around the country, including all the madness that could equal more realignment. Who knows? I don't know, but he knows. All right, y'all. Later, my taters.